few weeks ago, I met up with about 10 motorcycle riders in Estes Park, Colorado. There were some I had not met before, so I went around introducing myself. Of course, I mentioned that I host a podcast about motorcycling, and I said to the group something like, "Hey, if anyone has an interesting motorcycling story, I'd love to hear it." I had no idea what I was about to hear from Kim Casares. Kim, who I was meeting for the first time, said rather casually, "Well, Ron, I rode motorcycles with an all-women's group from Kathmandu in Nepal to the base camp of Mount Everest. The trip was featured on the BBC." It took me a minute to pick myself up off the floor. I said, "You've got to be kidding. Wow." Of course, I immediately asked Kim if she would share her story on this podcast, and she agreed. Of course, we went for a ride that day, but I couldn't wait to reconnect to record our conversation. You are in for a treat to hear about an amazing lady who pushed the limits of courage and strength to reach her goal. Here is my interview with my new friend, Kim Casares, motorcycle adventurer. Recorded in beautiful Loveland, Colorado. Welcome to Peace, Love, Moto, the podcast for motorcyclists seeking that peaceful, easy feeling as we cruise through this life together. Are you ready? Let's go. Well, Kim, hey, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for being on Peace, Love, Moto.
Oh, thanks for asking me. This is great.
Yeah. I think maybe you would agree that we as motorcycle riders, it's so easy to be a social butterfly because it's like how you and I met, right? I mean, we're just with a mutual friend up at Estes Park, and we're all motorcycle riders. So we already have this brotherhood and sisterhood thing already going because riding a motorcycle is exciting, dangerous, cold, hot, and so it's a certain type of person, most likely, that you're going to meet who rides. So you got that taken care of already. But you know where I'm going with this. So the shocking part for me is after I met you, and we're talking, we had a group of 10, I guess, maybe 10.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So we're talking, and I mentioned that, oh yeah, I've got a podcast and stuff. I like to interview people. And you said something like, yeah, by the way, I rode a motorcycle to the base camp of Mount Everest. And I was like, what? What? Really? He said, yeah, and it's documented and everything. And oh my goodness, I'm still at the wow factor of that. And I watched a number of videos, a couple of links that you sent me, and then I saw another similar one. But that is just real cool. And we're gonna get there. But I've got to start off like with, and I mentioned this in other interviews too. When I go and meet a stranger, I seldom, if ever, I try to keep myself from saying, "What do you do?" Instead, I like to say, "What do you do for fun?" Because you could be a brain surgeon or you could pick up the trash every morning. I don't know, and I don't really care that much, really. It's interesting when you meet somebody on a motorcycle and, by the way, what do you do? Oh, I'm a brain surgeon. Really? But so tell me about yourself. So to first off, how did you grow up and have this adventurous spirit that clearly took you to an amazing adventure?
Well, that's really hard to pin down, of course, where it all came from. I do know that my dad had a very adventurous spirit, and he rode motorcycles. So I have to believe that some of that, whether it was nature or nurture, some of it came through. And fast forward, I was probably 52 years old, 54 years old, and just looking for some more adventure in my life. And I had some friends that rode motorcycles and said, "Hey, this would be a great thing to do if you want to travel." And I was looking to travel and get some adventure that way. And this is sort of a fun way to combine the two, something new to do and exciting, a little challenge, or a lot of a challenge, and then start traveling around the United States and then a little bit around the world.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you didn't start as a kid. Uh,
No, mm-mm. It was
you,
8 years ago.
oh my goodness, that's amazing. Well, we that started as kids, I got my first back when I was 11 years old. The advantage there certainly is that when you fall on a little bitty bike and you're a little bitty kid, it
Mm.
doesn't hurt that much, but it teaches you that falling hurts and stuff. So I so admire those that jump into motorcycling later because I'm sure everybody's telling you how dangerous this is going to be, right?
Yeah, I think I had a healthy sense of and a lot of support around me from those that knew to wear all the gear and take lessons, which I did.
Oh, you did?
Uh,
Did
I
you
did.
go to schools or something?
I took some, I mean, I had to take your basic motorcycle class, of course,
Hmm.
but then I went with a off-road group and spent a weekend learning how to ride my motorcycle off-road. And that's really where I kind of fell in love with it. It's really fun to ride off-road.
Yeah.
And and then starting to ride a motorcycle that way, it was it's kind of like doing the hardest part first,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? So I got my skills off-road and then I started to hone my skills on the road when I traveled.
It's the way to do it. I've heard
Yeah.
over and over again where so many street wrecks, so many street accidents are because the rider maybe started a little bit later. It didn't have the natural instincts, but never rode on the dirt. And
Um,
it would be fair to say that, at least in my experience too, and still today, you saw I'm riding a BMW GS, and what were you riding that day? Is that
that was a BMW 650 GS.
yes, okay.
Yeah.
That when you're out on the dirt, things get a little loose underneath that, right? And you
Hmm.
learn to stay loose and not panic and all that. It becomes second nature, hopefully, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's jump into, if I may, how in the world did you find a path to get to connecting with folks? So you made it to the base camp of Mount Everest, which is crazy, amazing, hard, right? There's so many factors.
There are. And I when I started riding and traveling, adventuring in the United States, as you mentioned, there's a community, and I did have some good friends that also traveled and adventured. So they were more in the know than I was and had more connections, more of the spider web. And they actually shared with me, hey, Kim, you're really enjoying this off road thing. And I just heard about this. I just heard about this trip, this tour in Nepal, and it's all about girls. It's just for girls, and it sounds like something you might really be interested in. So they sent me the link, and sure enough, as I started checking it out, it was, of course, how could you turn down something that said, Girls on Top, we're traveling to the base camp of Mount Everest? And
Maybe
yeah, so as I
the obvious. The name kind of captures a lot of attention, right?
yes, of course, which was intentional, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
well, sure, sure.
Um, but as I was looking at the tour itself, I felt like I did my due diligence. I looked at the route and zoomed in on Google Earth to see how much dirt or how steep or how many rocks, and I tried to compare it to what I had ridden here in Colorado, and it seemed to me to be very comparable. Nothing I hadn't done before, and didn't seem to be any reason why I shouldn't take this trip
Uh-huh.
and do this adventure with all these really cool women.
Is it a a package deal that you pay X amount and you get the bike
Mhm.
and everything? Okay.
Yes, Yep, we just had to fly there to Kathmandu.
Uh-huh.
And once there, we'd already paid. They had a fleet of 26 bikes that they lined up in our courtyard of our hotel and had them all serviced and ready to go. So we did one warm-up ride through Kathmandu just to get used to these motorcycles since we hadn't ridden them before and familiarize ourselves with them. And then after the warm-up ride, we had one more day of logistics and what he expected. You know, we did have a leader, the group leader. This is a tour that he'd done many times before, but this is the only time he'd done it with just women.
Yeah, I love that.
So he, once we got through all the logistics and making sure our passports were ready to go, and then we took off.
Wow. I'm
We
gonna
just,
overuse. Wow, I got to come up with another word. But that's just the coolest thing. So the 26 bikes, were these all matching bikes? And
yes,
what were they?
they were Royal Enfield Himalayans.
Oh, okay. Okay. So enough power, but not too heavy, right?
Right. I think that they're 450s or 500s. I can't quite remember, but they're very low to the ground and the center of gravity is really low. They were great for off-road and in the mud and dirt, the rain, all the rain that we encountered.
Yeah.
They were really good bikes for this purpose.
I've heard that they're rock solid. I've never ridden one. I'm going to have to go over to our local in Fort Collins and take one for a spin because, yeah, I've heard that they're just rock solid, like a smaller Kawasaki KLR. Just been around for
Mhm.
just work real well.
Yeah, like little tanks. They're great.
Yeah, yeah. Um, you'd mentioned the rain. And I remember when we were talking, you talked about how the timing was important to try to beat the rainy season or be behind the rainy season. I can't remember, but I think you mentioned that you caught it though somehow, caught the edge of it.
Well, the rainy season should have ended in the second week in September. And we got there the third week, and rain hadn't ended, and it continued on for another couple of weeks. Turned out it was a 25-year flood, essentially,
Wow.
that they had. It was nothing like rains they hadn't seen in a long time. And there were landslides, and then the roads were completely blocked off. We had to change our route several times. And this is all really in Nepal. Once we got into Tibet, it was bright sunshine, dry roads. It was great. So this is just while we were in Nepal.
Yeah, I saw some video. I think that you had shared with me, or I found it on my own, both. But uh, where you're going down this road that literally is underneath currently underneath a waterfall,
Yeah.
and whoever is being videoed, then they dump the bike over, and not only did they dump the bike over, but they fell with the waterfall coming down on them underneath the bike. So it's like
Yes.
not just an oh no, but like oh no.
Yeah, that waterfall was quite tricky.
Wow.
It caught a lot of us up.
But it looked like too, though, that you all really came together. I mean, one person falls, the others go run to help,
Mm.
right?
Mhm. We did that first day we were riding, and there was so much mud. There were quite a few of the women that didn't have very much off-road experience. So I ended up having a group of them with me, and only because I had had so much off-roading here in Colorado that I was able to pick lines and help guide them so they would follow me through,
Oh,
follow my line to try and get through. But that is exactly what we did. Whoever needed help picking up bikes and guiding through certain sections or even getting on someone's bike and riding it for them.
yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you'd mentioned too that only a fraction of the group made it all the way.
Yes. Unfortunately, that first day was sort of, yeah, weeding people out, so to say. Only out of the 20 some women that were there, only 10 went on the next day.
Oh,
So the rest they just found their way back home. It was really hard because we'd spent quite a bit of time together bonding,
yeah.
especially in our hotel in Kathmandu, and getting to know each other and meeting new people from different countries. We were really behind each other as a group. We were so excited to do this trip, and to have so many of us leave after the first day. I can tell you that we were all in tears. It
Oh,
was a very difficult departure the second day.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a total of how many days then did it take to get there?
It took us 7 or 8 days to get to Mount Everest Base Camp. We went the long way. It took us that many days to acclimate to the altitude.
Oh, that's on my list too. I wanted to ask you about
Mhm.
that as well. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so most of the time we were just climbing up to elevation and riding at elevation so that our bodies would acclimate. And then by the eighth day, I think we actually went up to Mount Everest Base Camp and then spent the night there. So that was actually a challenge too, because even though we could ride at this elevation, spending the night, then a few of us got sick that night, having to do the whole 24 hours there.
Uh-huh.
That was another challenge.
Oh my goodness. And what altitude did you reach then? What was the base camp?
17,200 feet.
Yeah, again, I've got to find another word for wow. Well, you and I
Um,
know, being here in Colorado, that any number of times when, well, for example, Longs Peak, it's to the west of where I live here in Loveland. Where do you live, by
mhm.
the way?
In Loveland.
You're in Loveland too. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
So I've climbed Longs Peak one time. It's a 14er, over 14,000 feet here in northern Colorado. Climbed it one time. I know I'll never be able to climb it again. I just don't have the knees or else for that. But anyway, as you probably know, there's some people that will go up and camp, like at the boulder field, I believe, and they'll camp out. And then the boulder field is like at what, 12,000 feet, but any number of, and that's just 12, and you were at, way above that. Um, any number of people that I've talked to said there was no way I could sleep at
Oh, yeah.
feet. Well, why is that? I guess this is just your body just needs a little bit more oxygen to sleep comfortably than up there.
Then some, yeah, and not, everybody's body reacts differently. Interestingly enough, just because I had been acclimated or lived at 5,000 feet here in Loveland, um, just because some of the other women lived at sea level, didn't mean that they were going to have any more difficulty or that I would have it any easier.
Right.
And in going to elevation, there didn't seem to be a correlation. So it's very hard to tell who will react to the high altitude and have issues.
Yeah. Yeah. Just an observation when we met in person, you're clearly physically fit. So I would assume the other ladies were prepared physically for this as well.
To different degrees, yes.
Well put. Emotionally, though, was everyone prepared for such a struggle as this?
I would say no, not for the struggle. I think everybody was prepared for an adventure. The group of women that came together were amazing women. I was so um, impressed to meet them, to share this with them, really from such different backgrounds, and like you said, whether it's a brain surgeon or a trash collector. I mean, these women were from all different backgrounds. Some had kids, some didn't, and some were working, some weren't. It was just really cool to come together because I think we all had a very cool sense of adventure. So that was a great thing to bond us. But I think the challenge was not, people weren't experienced in off-road riding. And that's really what it came down to. A couple of the Harley riders who'd
Oh,
been riding for 30 or 40 years, but nevertheless, that changed things once you got off road, and I think that surprised some people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it certainly would. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really interested too in the cultural experience that you had there because I guess maybe it's obvious. I'm attracted to adventurous people. I just think that's fascinating. Anyone who wants to get out and kind of push their limits a little bit and not go completely crazy, but especially someone who is interested in going out into another culture and not to be there clearly, not to bash what else's lifestyle is, but instead embrace it. And and just embrace humanity. I love that. Those are the kind of people I like to hang around. Is people like that.
Mhm.
We're oh, I shouldn't even get into this at all, but we're kind of in a political climate that's an issue. So anyway, but the cultural experience, what was that like? That's clearly a very different culture than people
Oh yeah.
in Colorado, right?
It was it was for me probably one of the most intense cultural experiences so far. Um, yeah, as I say that, I'm remembering other people talk about their cultural experiences, and I'm about to say the same thing that I think so many people say is the people are fantastic. And it's true. You can have differences in religion or in the culture such that how you drive or how you live, and so many people living in a small house, how you go to the bathroom, all of these things, what you eat
Yeah.
can be so different, but the people were always happy and excited to help us and interested in why we were doing what we were doing.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, it was Kathmandu in Nepal. It was very interesting culturally. But then we went into Tibet, and that was another culture shock. Very different. Meeting people in the Tibetan culture, their rituals, yet it was, part of China. So we had encountered stops along the way, checkpoints.
I was wondering about that. Yeah.
Yes, there were checkpoints where we all were stopped and our passports were looked at, and there are cameras in a lot of places watching you as you go down the road, recording your license plates and whatnot. Um, whether it's whatever it is, good or bad, doesn't matter. It was just a very unique cultural experience.
Yeah.
And the Tibetan people too, they were more fascinated. Why would you want to ride a motorcycle here? And what, the whole concept was so foreign to them.
Uh-huh.
So it was great to share it with them and see their surprise. And yeah.
It makes me think of my daughter. So I have a son and a daughter, both adults, both have their own kids now. So I'm a grandpa. But my daughter, Stephanie, when she finished college, she let my wife and I know that she was wanting or planning, already planned, and had been accepted to the Peace Corps. And she got accepted to go as a teacher to the island nation of Vanuatu. Do you know where that is?
I don't. Mm-mm.
Well, I didn't either. It's kind of in the triangle between Australia and New Zealand and Fiji. So it's kind of in that triangle.
Mm.
So I think it's an African nation. Well, anyway, for one thing, she was going to be the first Peace Corps volunteer in that village, and many in that village had never seen anyone that looked like my daughter at all. So
Mm.
very different. Skin
Yes.
color, hair texture, everything was very, very different. And it's funny. My wife and I, to this day, I mean, that was a few years ago now, we're just amazed that our daughter did that and how
Yeah.
proud we still are of her to this day. It was scary and heartbreaking sometimes with some of the experiences that she had, but it was wonderful too. And I'll just say one more thing on that note is that she learned the language, this Vishlama language, I think it was. And she just fell in love with the people. There was a lady there considered her mama, and someone papa, who we as her parents had to completely trust. But it was just another reminder that people all over the world, and you know this better than me with your travels, there are good, wonderful, wonderful people everywhere.
Yes.
Just say hello and be open. Yeah, I made myself a note. I think I know this quote correctly, but Mark Twain, on the subject of travel, I believe he said that travel is fatal to bigotry and narrow-mindedness. I think that's what he said. I have the direct quote in front of me, but I was
That's
just,
very cool.
and I find it a little bit in my day job too. I work in an international company, and I work with teams all over the world, in Europe, India, New York, strange places like this. But I've shared it any number of times. I think that having that experience over the last 20, 25 years of working with international people has made me a better person, because I realized that, you know what, our cultures are so different. We speak
Yeah.
but love is love, and
Yes.
you can love your employees, I think, the way you should, and it's just great. I love that gift of being able to do that. And two, with us having the internet, of course, we're just across town from each other right now, but it's really, this opportunity is really cool. So, well, what's the next big thing for you? I can't wait to ride with you again. I want to do off-roading stuff. I'm not, I'm on a pretty heavy bike with that GS, but I'd love to do a little off-roading. But do you have another adventure in mind coming up?
Well, yeah, we've talked about going to South Africa and riding, and also Germany.
Really? What is your plan specifically in South Africa? Do you have it narrowed down what you want to do?
No, we don't. We're just starting to plan that. But friends in Durban and off-roading, probably going into Lesotho and enjoying the coast some, and then the mountains. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. And Germany. So why would you pick Germany?
Well, actually, mutual friends of ours are going to Germany. So we have this jumped on the bandwagon with them.
Oh, neat.
And, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that sounds great. That sounds like a lot of fun. Wow.
Yes, because we finish with Oktoberfest, so it should be very fun.
Oh boy, that should really be fun. My wife and I enjoy watching the travel guide guy, Rick Steves. Yeah, and he's the one, I think, who closes all of his shows with the quote from Mark Twain. So that's why where that kind of. But we've seen any number of times where he's in Germany for Oktoberfest, and oh my goodness, just the spirit of that place, that atmosphere. I can just only imagine.
Yes, and of course the mountains nearby, and it should be wonderful.
Yeah. Well, Kim, thank you so much for visiting with me. We didn't have a chance to talk like this at all when we were together with the larger group. We went for a really, really fun ride and ended up at a nice place for lunch and photo op and stuff. But I didn't get a chance to visit with you. But so nice to get to know you, and look forward at some point to get in a ride and maybe a stop at a coffee shop to visit some more.
Oh, sounds great. Yes, thanks so much. It was really fun to ride with you, and hopefully we can do it again.
Well, my friends, this is what we've been saying all along on this podcast. If you ride a motorcycle, you're a member of a wonderful community of good people who share a passion for riding, the outdoors, and in some cases, a passion for adventure. My special thanks to my new friend, Kim Casares, for taking the time to share with us her amazing story. As always, thank you so much for listening. I wish you peace. I wish you love.